Hey, what's up guys? So I have a video for you guys today and we are going to be talking about the best side deck card in Yu-Gi-Oh! I get asked all the time, Asian Ice Boy Dragon, what is the best side deck card? Now the thing is, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a game that constantly evolves. There's not one card that is good for everything and there's not one card that's good for every certain matchup. I actually have a video on how to side deck and actually how to get better at Yu-Gi-Oh! If you want to check that out, I'll put a link down below in the description box and I'll kind of give you a better understanding of, what cards that you might want to choose for your side deck. But a lot of times it really comes down to stopping your opponent from making some certain plays, whether it's stopping the graveyard from being there, whether it is stopping them from getting certain advantages in the game, whether it's stopping them from summoning completely. Now there's also one thing that you have to take into consideration when you're side decking. Now there are cards that hurt certain decks, like for example Light Imprisoning Mirror. That would hurt just one specific deck, where it is much better to run cards that can stop a majority of decks, have a variety of decks that you can actually counter. Something like Imperial Iron Wall would be something that you could technically use against other decks that like to banish cards, where it can be used also against elemental dragons. One deck like, for example, Spellbooks, that is a deck that likes to banish cards. And if they don't have access to that, you can shut down multiple decks with one card. However, I really feel that there's one card that kind of sticks out of any of the side deck choices in Yu-Gi-Oh! And that card is Prohibition. Prohibition is a card where you don't actually hurt yourself because you're just going to be calling your opponent's cards. If you are playing in Mirror Match, I mean, sure, if you're in a situation where a Dark Hole would be the only card that your opponent can really use to actually get out of a situation that you've put them in, hey, Prohibition is still technically good in Mirror Match. Prohibition can really stop certain decks. I mean, if you're playing against Lightsworn, you call Judgment Dragon. If you are playing against maybe Fire Fist, you call Tenki. Like, this card is probably one of the best side deck cards, and it's kind of strange that this card hasn't been seeing that much play. Now, if you're playing against heroes, Miracle Fusion, I know heroes aren't really like a meta right now, but if you're playing against the Dragon Rulers, you could call something, say, like Blaster, that stops a lot of, searching, it stops the popping effect that they usually get rid of. I mean, maybe if you have a Vandy's Emptiness plus a Prohibition, and, most Dragon players do not main deck Mystical Space Typhoon simply because they have access to Blaster to potentially get rid of, any other cards that they need to get rid of. If you have Prohibition plus Vandy's Emptiness, hey, you might be set up to actually just stun your opponent completely. There's actually another card that's very similar, which I felt like it was necessary to mention, which is Cloak and Dagger. So they basically have the same effect, although Cloak and Dagger is a trap card. So you can kind of use that to your advantage. Maybe they go activate Tenki and they search for a certain card. Then you could just chain Cloak and Dagger and then call whatever they added with, like Duality, Reinforcement of the Army. Just call whatever they added with it. But Prohibition is technically a little bit faster. If you know your opponent maybe has a Swift Scarecrow and you're playing a Dragon Ruler Mirror Match, hey, you call the Swift Scarecrow, you proceed to OTK, and then there you go. So I think, honestly, guys, what it comes down to is there's not really a answer for the best side deck card. There's not one card I would say that, is like the best card and there's nothing that can triumph that card, because you have to take into consideration what deck you're playing and what deck your opponent is playing. And I think what it really comes down to is you want cards that can stop a variety of things, whereas, like I mentioned before, like Light Imprisoning Mirror, more conditional than, say, something like Vandy's Emptiness, which you can stop a lot of decks. I mean, very few decks that are popular in the meta do not special summon at all. And, like I said, Prohibition, probably one of the most versatile cards because, it doesn't really hurt you, whereas cards like, say, like Vandy's Emptiness, that can technically hurt you, but, usually you train to when your opponent's going to activate something. But there are times where your opponent only has inherent special summons, which means you cannot chain Vandy's Emptiness to. An example of that would be something like Judgment Dragon, Dark Arm Dragon, anything that just special summons itself from the hand, and there's no thing that you can actually chain to. But like I said, guys, if you want to understand more about the whole side decking mechanic in Yu-Gi-Oh!, I'll put a link down below in the description box and you can kind of get a better understanding of it. But for the sake of this video, I will honestly say Prohibition and the Cloak and Dagger are probably one of the greatest side deck cards because it's very easy to understand how to use. Obviously, you just call most of the time you just call the deck win condition. But like I said, check out the video on how to side deck, and you can learn how to get better at Yu-Gi-Oh! I have a bunch of videos on how to get better at Yu-Gi-Oh! Even though I'm pretty bad at this game myself, I figure I do know a little bit about the game, and I figure I can share with you guys some of the newer players into the game, or some of the players that are looking to get a little bit more competitive. I mean, even though I'm awful, I've topped guys. So anyways, like I said, have some fun watching the video, and I hope this gives you a slight idea on some of the side deck cards that you might be unfamiliar with. They're actually pretty good, and both of these cards are pretty cheap, whereas this card kind of expensive at the moment. But anyways, have a great day. Thanks for watching, guys. Asian Eyes out.